First of all, thank you both for being here. I'd like to just touch on a couple of the things that you've said, and then I have a question. Commissioner Felius, you said what I believe doesn't matter, but that's actually not true. What you both believe does matter, because this commission is here to get information so that we can make a decision, and that's why you're here. That's why we invited you here. So what you say does matter, and what you believe. You mentioned that people are fearful of losing the ability to elect their officials. Well, under the proposed form of government that you have a preference for, that's exactly what would happen. They would lose their ability to elect their treasurer, their prosecutor, their sheriff, their assessor, and those people. So I don't think it's accurate when you make statements like that. We're looking at a different form of government. I'm very open to the idea. I want to truly understand what is wrong with our current form, besides the fact that maybe we're spending $900 on a toilet seat like the federal government does, with some inefficiencies here and there. But what we also have is a system that's set up where different elected officials can counter other elected officials. You gave a number of examples of your hypothetical if there's a problem with a sheriff. Well, what if there's a problem with a commissioner? Under a form of government where we have a county manager, for example, and you have these elected commissioners, who's holding them accountable? Certainly not the county manager, because he can lose his job. And if everyone else underneath that county manager is now hired as opposed to elected, well, then you no longer have anyone who's really having a check against the county commissioners in that sense, except the constituents who have to wait until the next election to get rid of those people. Okay, so, that's one of the things that I kind of like about this form of government. I'll be upfront about that, but I'm trying to find ways to say, okay, what's really wrong? So, for example, in December 3rd, Steve Matheson actually did say he was not going to pay for paving on some property that the county had taken over because the taxes weren't paid. And one of the reasons he didn't want to pay for the paving, which came out to about $65,000, these are the minutes from the meeting, is that the county is not involved in maintaining properties that it has taken where taxes weren't paid. It just happened that a county official who was hired and not elected owns 2 parcels next to that property where they wanted basically a driveway to be paved on it. And
It's a county employee, not a county official.
employee, fine, but it's still somebody that I'm sure each of you know. And so Steve Matheson said, I ain't doing it. It's not right. And so there was an opportunity where an elected official countered what the commissioners wanted, because you see, you just got done saying that if the sheriff reported to you.
What's your question?
I'm getting to the question,
well, please.
okay?
And
Yeah,
he didn't refuse. He came to a meeting and said to us, this would not be a good idea. And we agreed with him.
Well, but that's in essence saying, as treasurer, he strongly opposes spending any money to maintain this property.
That's the way we work together.
Yeah.
He didn't say, I refuse.
Yes.
He said, here's why. These are the reasons. And I think all 3 of us said, that's a good argument.
Yes. And so my point is that if this treasurer worked for the commissioners, then he would just do it, and there wouldn't be any stopping it, in a sense. No different than if you hire the sheriff. You want the waterways to be patrolled. You tell the sheriff, or like you said, he'll lose his job, he'll get fired, which is what a police chief, in essence, gets done. I mean, you said that just now. Okay, and so my question is how do the commissioners get held accountable by other government officials if we look at a different form of government that's different than what we have now?
Okay, so let me try to segment and answer your question. Okay, first, I think you made the statement that my opinion didn't matter.
No, it does matter.
It does matter, right?
Yes, you said it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter in the end. In the end, whatever decision you make, I will abide by.
Sure.
My opinion does matter as you go through your decision-making process.
Yes.
Hopefully. If it doesn't, that's up to you guys. Okay. Secondly, the situation that you just raised about who holds the commissioners responsible, well, at some point, it stops with the people. Once again, let's go back to the corporate example. If you have a corporation, who votes on the board of trustees of the corporation? The people. Well, in their case, the shareholders. In this case, the residents. So ultimately, it does go back to the people. If it doesn't go back to the people, well, who does it go to at that point?
But it's less to the people when you have fewer elected officials. When you have, I mean, if you were to go to 5 county commissioners and then take away the other 6 elected positions, it really is, it becomes bureaucratic in some sense, and it also takes away that accountability to the people from each of these different silos within the county structure.
Well,
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, you're right to use the word silos, and that's what exists today, and that's part of the problem. So what I'm saying is, if you have 5 county commissioners, you're actually increasing the representation, if you want to call it that, and you're distributing it on a greater basis across the county. So the fact that they're not electing those other 4 or several officials doesn't mean they're losing representation, any more than shareholders lose representation when they elect the Board of Trustees to whom the CEO reports. It's no different.
Yeah, I understand. So what about my question, which was, how do the commissioners get checked outside of, because, for example, you talk about accountability, like the
did answer
checking
that.
account. I know, but I guess the question I'm getting at is that when you have a different form, you talked about how the checking account, we assume it's set up or, it's accounted for properly. To me, that seems like a Sunlight issue and not another official being accountable for it. That it needs to be exposed so that the public can see someone hasn't been handling the checking account correctly. And my point is, how do you hold these how do people know what's going on inside government if no one speaks up because for fear of being fired by that county manager or by fear of being fired by a commissioner? How are we going to know what's not going right inside government?
I'm telling you, you don't know now. That's my whole point. Okay, let's go back to your original question, which, if I understood it correctly, I think, were you trying to ask who's holding the county commissioners accountable?
At this point, yes, who would hold them accountable?
It's no different than today. Today, you're holding 3 of us accountable. Now, do you know what we're doing? No, there's only so much visibility that you can have. And whether it's 3 or 5 or 7, you're still limited by what you can observe. I don't know how else to answer your question.
So then, if there's no accountability, I'm just trying to understand, if there's no accountability now, how is a different form of government going to change that?
Because ultimately, it still has to come back to a vote. And the vote is for the county commissioners. You're voting for us now, you would be voting for us or them in the future.
But we wouldn't know under this new form of government what's going on. What you said is, we don't know what's going on now.
We're going in circles. What's going to happen? Then why don't you dissolve government and call it Marxist?
That's not what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is, how are people going to know that things aren't working properly under a different form of government, presumably the one that you have a preference for?
Because you will have a greater degree of accountability, because those that are currently elected, that are now being managed by a CEO, are accountable to that individual. So for those individuals, they have accountability to the county manager. The county manager, in turn, has accountability to the county commissioners. The county commissioners now have an accountability to the public, just as we do today. But today, you don't have visibility into what those other county officials are doing.
Would we have it under that proposed form of government?
Yes, because you're going to have a manager that's directly overseeing those.
Is it because someone says, it all looks good to me, or is it going to be because the public gets to see this information?
How is this any different than what you have in the corporate world? Are you saying we ought to revolutionize and change?
The corporate world opens their books up. They get audited all the time.
Goodness gracious, so do we. Every meeting is public and open.
That's different than the books.
It's more deniability.
Bruce, it's almost 7 o'clock, please.
Yeah, I think.
We're getting repetitive. Please try to wrap
It's
up your
fine.
question.
I guess I got the answer to my question.